One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got these words, I got these questions, I got this stuff that's going to be like, might be a wake up call for you. It definitely was for me when I started to do some research on today's topic. We're going to look at some symptoms of something. And so I'm going to share with you some thoughts, and then you tell me in your own way if this is going on in your business right now. Okay. So, first of all, do you have high turnover? Some people say yes, some people say no, some people are like, oh, I'm okay so far. How about absenteeism? Uh-oh, that might have got a couple people. What about poor work quality? Now all of a sudden we're getting more and more people raising their hand. And then this one, which really kind of threw me for a loop, missed deadlines. I was like, wow, that's crazy where this is coming from. So if you are seeing these symptoms in your company, maybe you're part of it, maybe you're leading the company, it's entirely possible that you have a culture issue. And so I am working today with and hanging out with a company culture expert. We have Dr. Kristine Gentry on. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. You are the CEO and founder of Culture Grove. So fill us in on what's Culture Grove.
So Culture Grove is a consultancy where we help companies improve their culture so that their employees and their businesses can thrive. So we offer, usually start with some culture assessment and getting to understand the existing culture, and then talk with leaders about what their ideal culture is and where they want to be, and then help address and fill in the gaps. And then I
Wow.
also do a lot of speaking and workshops and things are teaching people what culture is and why it's important at all different levels. So with leaders, managers, and then also people who are on the job market, new graduates wanting to go out and figure out where they want to work, what might be a good culture fit. So I'm really just passionate about culture and teaching people about what culture is.
That's so cool. And I think it's so crazy at the outset because a lot of people, Kristine, are like not really even sure what their culture is, right? And they think that, oh, we don't have a culture here. They have that blind spot, or they say everything is fine. I mean, I love the fact that there's a culture assessment. So can you kind of walk us through what that looks like? Somebody might be listening right now thinking, I don't know what my culture is like. How do I find that out? So what does the assessment do, and how does that work?
Yeah, so I think great question and great points. And a lot of people think we don't have a culture, but every organization, every group of people has culture. So whether you're intentional about it or not, you do have a culture. And it is really important to know what that culture is. So if you haven't, for companies who don't really think about it, a culture assessment would start with a survey of all of your employees, and it's really important to get feedback. I mean, at least it's sent out to everyone, and hopefully many respond. But I've sometimes had pushback from people saying, no, we just need to talk to the leadership team. But no, if you don't get
Yeah,
feedback from all of your employees, you don't know what's happening on your frontline employees. Your leadership can say one thing, but it may not trickle down to, so you want feedback from as many people as possible. But we also, I'm an anthropologist, which is a really qualitative discipline. So we do research, qualitative research, which includes going and talking to people, but also observation. And we're looking for what do you say you do in your culture? What do people say about their culture? And what's really happening? And where are their differences? Because there are always differences. We always, say we do things, and the reality is we often don't do quite everything we say we do or the way we say it do. We do it. And a lot of culture is really unspoken. So, and subconscious. Like we don't articulate these things about how we work and how we get things done in an organization that are our culture. So that has to do with like power issues, who is invited to meetings, who talks at meetings. It's also is, things like what's your actual start time and end time, and do people take lunches? Do they feel
sure.
like they can take PTO? All these things that you learn once you're in an organization that are really kind of unspoken are a big part of your culture.
Wow. Well, and I'm just curious on the culture assessment piece because, like, how do you get people to be honest with you? How do you get people to open up? Because I feel like, on one hand, you'd have people, Kristine, that are like they're scared to say what's really going on. But then you have the people like on the other end that like make way more out of it than it is. Like, this place sucks. Well, I can't stand it. They make me work all day. How do you find that the how do you kind of sift your way through the person to get to really what's going on there?
So, it's kind of, just the general issue that you have with doing research, right? When you're studying humans, because you're right, there's all these things that impact, and maybe you're having a bad day the day you get a survey and everything is
Yeah,
marked wrong, or maybe you're having a great day and everything's marked right. So, ideally, you replicate the survey every year, so you're kind of comparing data and trends over time. But you also, if you get a large enough percentage of respondents, then you have a good sampling size and you can make some um, assessments about like this is really representative of how the population feels. And we will say this is on this particular day. So if a survey went out and something horrible happens to the company the next day, okay, well, we did this survey and then the next day, I mean, obviously you wouldn't intentionally launch a survey and have when you know you're going to lay off people or something, right? Like
sure,
you want to
sure,
have timing, and usually leaders will be very cautious about the timing. Like, let's do the survey right after we give bonuses. It's a great bonus year. So so there is trying to
sure,
like figure out when is a neutral time to give the survey. I would push for. You don't want to game it either way. But so you get your survey results, you're looking at the average, right? So hopefully those outliers, don't influence too much. You also look at other things. Like we would look at what's on social media about your company? What are your customers saying about your company? What are the Glassdoor reviews and other places where people put reviews? And then, like I said, the interviews, talking to people, you would really be surprised at how much people open up when they know we're a third party. This is not, we're not telling people. We would report quotes, but not who said that. We always promise
sure,
anonymity. I mean, I'm a researcher. Protecting the participants is like first and foremost. I wouldn't want to do anything to hurt the people who I'm researching, whether it's the leaders or an employee who's upset and not happy. I wouldn't want them to lose their job. So my goal is to protect
sure,
them. And obviously, the work isn't going to be good if the people don't trust us. And then the part of observing what people say, and over time, like you don't want to just go in. Ideally, the best way we would understand a culture would be spending some time around the people. So these days that can be a little tricky if it's a virtual company or they're
yeah,
mostly remote. But to really understand, you just need to spend as much time as possible. And that can be tricky too. And in businesses, you're not going to get as much time as I would like. In, academia, you can go and study people for much longer.
sure,
So it's tricky, but you kind of come with, and there is always this, I get concerned about how you interpret the data. Like, what does this
yeah,
mean? And that's where the talking to people can help you. Like, and you look at the numbers, like you were talking about. Like, are the responses to the questions showing that people are disengaged and you have very high turnover and people aren't showing up to work? Well, then you have an engagement issue that's part of your culture. So we look at everything together to figure out what's going on.
wow. How long does that process take, Christine? It feels like that could be a pretty labor intensive, obviously depending on the group size, but like for a team of 10, is that something that's like months to do, weeks to do, days to do? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, for a smaller team, it wouldn't mean much. And, because you can't really, I don't like to do surveys with a small group of 10 either. I would really want to do more. Let's just talk to everyone and get feedback from them on what's happening.
Okay,
So that's a couple days, go to some meetings. It's always great to be able to observe people in action,
okay,
see what happens at the meetings, and maybe even just hang out for a couple days. If they're in office, hang out for a couple of days and watch how work gets done, what's happening. So for a small company, I mean, I would say could do an assessment in a couple of weeks. It doesn't have to be very long. And then,
gotcha.
yeah, with a bigger company where you can do a survey, that's the reason you do a survey. So you can get a lot more
Okay,
feedback from more people quicker, because then it's harder to talk to everyone. But I always want to talk to as many people as we can feasibly do at all different levels. And again, I've had so many leaders push, oh, I wanted you to talk to my leadership team or my managers. And you always want to get information from the frontline employees as well and see what's happening on the ground because they do have a
I
lot of
imagine.
impact on your customer service and your culture.
Yeah, for sure. So does this work? Because I want to make sure for the smaller company listening, does that work for if you only have 10 people on your team and you think but you're experiencing the turnover, the absenteeism, you're experiencing some of the symptoms of a weak culture. Is that work in that smaller type of group as well?
Yes, and actually, I think it's easier to change a culture in a smaller group of people. If you're having that, first you want to look at the leader and what kind of leader are you, and what's coming from you to your people. Are you projecting the kind of culture you want, and have you been intentional about it? So that's, first we would look at what kind of culture do you have currently, but what do you want, and what have you set up? Like, have you identified your values? Are people making decisions based on your core values? Are you making decisions based on the core values? And are you doing what you say you do as the leader? A smaller team is actually easier to fix because you can get in and identify the problems quickly. And it really becomes I mean, maybe there's some leadership coaching that needs to happen to get the leader to understand their role. And I mean, the leader is so important, especially, well, in all of the businesses. But if the leader is, um, a small company, they're probably stressed, they're busy, they're working a lot, and they have to look at what are you sending out to your people. If you're working 24/7 and you're emailing everyone all night long because you can't sleep and you have something big coming on, you're subconsciously sending out this message to your people that they need to work 24/7. And I've heard people say, no, no, no. I tell my people, don't answer till the morning. Well, when you know your boss might be sending you an email at 2 a.m. and you wake up at 2 a.m. because you're stressed too, and you pick up your phone and you see this message from your boss, you don't go, oh, I mean, you might say, oh,
Yeah.
I'll deal with that tomorrow, but it's in your head. And now in the middle of the night, there's something you need to do first thing in the morning. Your boss
Right?
is thinking about it. I mean, it sets a bad tone. So I know so many leaders who say, well, I don't sleep and that's when I work. Like, okay, set your send to normal business hours. Don't send it in the
Yeah,
middle of the night. There's a lot that leaders do that set the tone for the company that they may not be realizing the stress that they're putting out to their people.
sure.
Or, are you reaching out to your employees on the weekend or when they're on vacation? I had a client who the leader loved to decide he needed to talk to people when they were on vacation, who he hadn't talked to in weeks or months, but somehow vacation was the time he
Magic.
needed them.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, and I think that, for people listening, I think a lot of these are the blind spots that we have as business owners where we don't, we've just become so ingrained in, let's say, because I get up, early every morning. So just because I do doesn't mean that I really have the right to expect other people to be up and working at that time. So I think that trying to understand your team is really obviously from a lot of different areas, it's really important and healthy here as we talk about culture and we'll talk about engagement in a little bit. But I want to make sure that I circle back to something that you said, Kristine, because you talked about the customer for a minute. And so I was curious, do you also kind of get feedback from customers as well to try to help on the culture side? Because I got to believe that a customer really either enjoys or doesn't enjoy a culture, and that has a lot to do with sometimes why companies acquire customers is their culture. So, what part does the customer play in this whole thing from your perspective?
The customer's opinions and feedback is very important. And so it can be really helpful to kind of do a whole 360 assessment of your culture. So for smaller organizations, I would say, who are your stakeholders? Do you have board members? Do you have, you want all the employees and you want feedback from your customers or your clients? And whether it can be formal or informal, if it's a big company and you have customer reviews online, we can check that out. If you have, a few big clients and you're okay with us sending them an email or a survey or talking to them, that can be really helpful. So really, it depends on the customer, our client, how much they want us to talk to the customers, but the best culture assessment is going to include a whole stakeholder review and analysis and see what are the perspectives from everyone. Because you're right, well, how your culture is functioning internally impacts how your employees do, and then that's going to impact the customer satisfaction and customer success. So that's part of why culture is so important because then in the end that impacts your overall business success. So it's a really, to me, very clear line. But so yes, the customer piece is very important to know how they're feeling as well.
Are they pretty open to sharing that information with you? I mean, it would seem like there might be some hesitancy from certain customers to really want to say, I'm this team isn't producing as much as I'd like, or I have this thought that I wish they would do this or they would do that. Do you seem to get a lot of people that are hesitant to share with you, or are they pretty open with you?
Well, I think the people who are willing to bring us in and have us do culture work tend to be open. The people who aren't open, they don't want you to look at it. They won't bring us in because
Yeah,
a lot of people don't want to know. They're like, no, we're doing just fine and don't
yeah,
dig under the hood. I don't want to hear what's happening.
yep,
Um, or, there's some leaders who say, yeah, something's wrong in this little department, go fix it and just deal with it. Don't tell me, which is
right,
not really, culture work. Like that always makes me nervous. That's a red flag to me if the leader doesn't want to be engaged and aware because it's not one little department's problem. Um, or if it
yeah,
is, if everything else is functioning really great and it's one little department's problem, then there's a leadership issue there. There's something going on that you still need the leader of the company to be, you need their support. You need them to be involved. You can't give culture to one person in the company and say, fix it. And a lot of
yeah,
companies, I think, try to do that and it just
yeah.
doesn't work.
And there's really not a culture department, right? It's not like there's a customer service department where, hey, if you want culture, talk to HR or talk to somebody else. Do you see that as like a common thought that this is not for everybody? There's just maybe it's an HR issue or it's not my deal. Do you feel at the beginning of your journey with these people, Kristine, do you feel like that's a common response?
Yes, I think a lot of people think, oh, we have HR and HR will fix this. And HR, sometimes they're, like, yeah, we want to do culture work. It's part of, we deal with people. It's great. Sometimes they're so overwhelmed with all the things they have to do already that it's another thing. And culture it's hard to influence. It's hard to shape and change. And it's not something that HR can do on their own. They need leadership support. They need direction from leadership. And you need leadership to embody and embrace the culture that you're trying to establish. So if you put it off to HR to come up with culture and then it's HR pushing it out and telling people this is what you need to do, but leadership is not living that out too. They're not talking about it. It's not important to them. It doesn't happen. It's going to die with as a HR initiative rather than an actual culture change project. So part of this is, I think, a big struggle for people who work in culture today is figuring out what is the right place to have this come from. And you really do need your C-suite involved. And they'll say, "Oh, we're too busy. We can't deal with this." So a lot of this is
Oh,
what I like to talk about is why it is so important for companies. And it's like a C-suite saying, "We're too busy for strategy."
yeah,
If you don't do your strategy, you're not going to be successful. And if you don't make sure you have a culture that can implement your strategy, you're not going to be successful. So they really go hand in hand. And it's important that leaders are involved, and then important that you look at how can you cascade the culture throughout that what you want to be your culture throughout, and that it would go through HR, but whoever runs your like employee resource groups, whoever does benefits, and but also team building if you have learning and development. I mean, all different layers, and then even all
yeah.
your managers need to know what this culture is and why it's important and how they influence because our managers have the biggest impact on our employees' happiness. And there's these new studies that say your manager impacts happiness as much as someone's spouse or partner. So
Wow.
if your manager is not good and they're not helping you to build the culture that you want, again, culture can die at the manager level. The leaders think we did all this work, we planned, we have this great culture. The managers don't buy in, they don't push it down to the line level. And I've seen this, and a lot of companies where at the C-suite, it sounds great and they're all bought in and they're excited. And the people on the front line are like, I've never heard of that. That's not what my manager does. I don't know what you're talking about. Like there's
Sure.
two different worlds.
Well, and I think I mean, to say that we don't have time to do this, to me, it'd be like saying no company that I know of would get away with their sales department saying, "Hey, I'm too busy to sell," or the marketing department saying, "I'm too busy to market." Accounting says, "Hey, I'm too busy to do the accounting." I mean, we that this "I'm too busy" thing, it doesn't, I don't know where that came from as far as like an excuse, because we definitely have the same 40 hours every week that we have, that everyone else has, that we just choose to do in that time. So, I want to take a quick break and we come back. Kristine, I want to transition into like the employee engagement because that's hand in hand with the culture here. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Dr. Kristine Gentry, the CEO and founder of Culture Grove. And we have been talking about the culture, and we've been talking about, some of the symptoms and the high turnover, the absenteeism, the poor work quality, and missed deadlines. I'm shocked, I guess, at thinking about Gallup's poll that comes out every year that says basically 1 in 3 of your team right now are engaged in their job. It just blows me away to think 2 out of 3 people. And I don't know, I want your opinion because I teach on this, speak on this around the country as you do. And I've yet to run into somebody that walked up to me after and said, "Hey, I got to tell you, man, these numbers are spot on." The people that come up to me, they're like, "I don't know, all of my people are engaged." And I'm thinking, if everybody's engaged, there's got to be this huge company somewhere that has just massive amounts of disengaged people just purely to even out the numbers on that. So these symptoms that we're talking about, are they generally because we're not engaged? Is that kind of, are you seeing those connections right at that spot?
Yes. Yeah. Um, I think the lack of engagement is what creates people not doing their work, not coming to work, looking for other jobs. When people are engaged, that means, I mean, they're enjoying their work. They feel like there's a purpose, they're connected, they're motivated, they're driven. When all those happen, then people want to stay. There's reasons they stay. They're excited about what they're doing, or even it just is meaningful. There's all these studies about if you have a best friend at work, you're more likely to stay. So those social connections can be very important. So yeah, I think employee engagement is very much connected, and employee engagement is a big piece of. If you have a good culture, your employees are going to be more engaged. So they're very connected, and that's part of what we're measuring in the culture assessment is engagement, along with what are you doing to be intentional about spreading a culture and creating opportunities for employees to be engaged. But it is a
Sure.
really interesting question that you ask about where are all these disengaged people. It just really makes me pause to think because I feel like on a personal level, or even when you read like the silent quitting thing, all these
Yeah.
people disgruntled about what's happening at work. I mean, look at it, the big thing that I keep like looking at and talking about now are these return to office mandates, and people are so angry about them. And when these companies that are mandating people suddenly go from, working either remote or hybrid for years to
Yeah.
you're going to be in office 5 days a week and
Yeah.
they don't want to, and they're telling them show up or get a new job, those people are not going to be excited to be there. They're not going to be
Sure.
engaged. Like you're
Yeah.
setting up, and especially when they say, "Oh, we're doing it for culture," I'm like you're doing it so
Yeah.
wrong.
It's
This is
the
this is
opposite of culture, right?
Yes. Well, you're killing your culture. I mean, you're creating a bad culture. You're going to have culture, but you're going to have a culture of people who are angry and
Yeah.
upset, and you're doing things to make them, see a benefit of coming into the office. But when we hear, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people in companies where they say, "Oh yeah, we go in 3 days a week and we all sit at our desk and we still have Zoom meetings because half the people aren't in, or we work with people around the world or whatever. So I'm doing the exact same thing. I just had to
Yeah.
drive 2 hours today to sit and do what I would do from home." So when
Yeah.
that's happening, that just leads to disengagement. People know they're
Yeah.
wasting their time. They know this isn't about what are they doing and what work they're producing. This is about someone else's insecurity, about is my team working? Someone wants to just see people there. Maybe it's about the office space. We paid rent for this, this building. We need to have people in it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And people don't know, but they know it's not impacting my work, except maybe it is because now I just lost 2 hours. I know plenty of people too who will say, if I spend those 2 hours on the road driving into the office, then I work when I'm there, my 8, 9, however many hours, and then I go home and I'm done because now I've lost time from my, home, all the things I need to
Yeah.
do in the evening. I'm busy. I'm not checking back in.
Yeah.
Whereas people who work from home work during the day, they get some stuff done in the evening, log back on at night and see, is there anything I missed? I'm ready for tomorrow. So companies, I think, are actually losing out hours on um, these mandates to return to office. And
Yeah.
it they're not, it's so interesting to me because there's so much data that supports doing things that make your employees happy, and that's what gets them engaged, and then they produce better works. And the people who are making these decisions are just ignoring all this data. I don't know. I don't know what they're
Yeah.
thinking.
Well, I tell you, there's a great book called People Over Profit. And I love that book because it basically says exactly what you're saying. You know what? We got to start treating our team better. And I think about when my dad was in the workforce back in the probably 70s, 80s, somewhere in there. You know what? Where there was in the back corner, there was a guy in a suit that smoked a cigar and he wanted to kind of his door was closed a lot and he was the owner or manager or whatever. They didn't even call them leaders back then, right? It was the boss.
Mhm.
And, there was just such a different culture. It was quiet. There was, everyone, you weren't supposed to leave your desk. I mean, there's just listening to my dad talk about that when he was alive. It's like, man, that just seems so different than what today is. And I love what you're saying about, this remote stuff. I feel like, Christine, it comes down to trust. There's a
Mhm.
big mistrust because if you're working from home, you're doing your laundry, you're watching TV, you're doing everything except your job. And that's just crazy to me to have that mentality. I get it. I know that there are people that are naturally skeptical people, but like how, and you said there's research to support this. If you're somebody listening, I guess, and they're in that spot where they, don't know if they should go back or not, how do you balance I got to make a profit, but I also have to have a happy team. Have you found anything that kind of straddles both of those?
Well, I think your happy team is going to help you make a profit. I mean, that's what all the data shows, right? Your unhappy, disengaged employees are going to cost you money. Um, but I think these companies are saying, and we're losing money. And all I know that we've done differently lately is or one of the things that's changed is we let people work from home. So we'll bring them all back in and see if that fixes it.
Yeah,
I think they're being really short-sighted and narrow-minded. Like we look at the bigger picture. Happening in the economy, politics, all these things going on that are impacting your business. And if you're really having issues where your employees, you should know what they're supposed to do. You should know if they're meeting their deadlines, if they're getting their work done on time. If they're not, then you address it with the people who aren't doing their work. I'm sure there are people who are taking advantage and, not working from home as much as they should
yep,
be. But do you punish the whole company for those people, or do you look and see, talk to your leaders? If this team isn't performing, let's figure out what's going on with that team. If it's a
yeah,
whole company wide, I mean, you're upset because your numbers are down. Just moving people to the office isn't going to change that. You
yeah,
really, yeah, and I think it's the quick fix that is a mirage. It's not a real fix. It's not a real answer. They're going to get everyone in the office. They're going to be upset, and numbers are going to plummet even more. And you're
right,
going to lose your best people. All the studies are showing too, the people who benefit the most from work from home are your top performers. They're women, they're minorities, they're all the people that give you diversity, that help leads to innovation, that leads to, great work, are most impacted, and they're leaving. And your smartest people are the ones, your best employees are the ones who are going to be able to leave and get another job. So
sure,
you're going to end up keeping all the slackers who aren't doing anything because all your top people left for a company that trusts them and lets them do their best work wherever they are able to. Um,
sure.
and I don't
Wow.
think I actually really personally think a hybrid approach is probably best. I do believe that we need human connections. There's a lot of studies too that show that teams that talk to each other regularly and interact do better than teams that don't, which I think is
Yeah,
makes sense. I mean, it's a given. If you
sure.
understand who you're working with, you know about them, you're going to work better together. So we
Yeah,
do have to be intentional about creating times for people to connect and not just have long, boring Zoom meetings where someone's talking and everyone else is multitasking. You want your teams to really talk to each other and spend time getting to
yeah,
know each other. Um, but that doesn't necessarily happen in an office. Like you move everyone in the office and they're still on Zoom calls all day, you're not
right.
changing. Like there's a problem, but where you're located isn't gonna naturally fix that.
Sure. Wow, that's so cool. Well, and I was just curious because we talked about culture and we talked about engagement. Which one do you feel like comes first? It's like, does an engaged employee bring with them a good culture and then they kind of help spread that culture? Or does this culture start and then you kind of acclimate to that? It just seems weird to look at both of those in like separate. They're so connected like you said before, Kristine, but yet people kind of separate them and
Mhm.
they don't think in terms of one affects the other. But like you said, the research shows it. And go back to what you said about your symptoms. If you're listening right now and you have high turnover, I don't know why we as leaders want to blame the team. When we have high turnover, I always laugh when they say, I'm so glad so and so doesn't work here anymore. They were good for this company. Well, I tell you what, they were great for the company yesterday. They quit today, and tomorrow, oh, I'm so glad they're gone. So we try to do some self-medicating there, but absenteeism, poor work quality. And I really wanted to hone in on this missed deadlines piece. I was shocked when I read that you wrote that. Fill us in on what that looks like. I would think of missed deadlines as like too aggressive of a deadline, too much of a workload. I would look at it from that way. So I really want to hear your side of that.
Yeah, and it can be. You can be very right. I think if it's going on hand in hand. So my point is, if your employees are not doing the work that they're supposed to do, um, it could be it's related to culture, and it could be that you're giving them too much work to do, and they're not able to get all this stuff done. So you really have to know, and I think that's important as leaders to know how much we're putting on our people's plates and are we expecting too much from them? Or is it a sign that someone is not really doing their work and they are the one who's doing the laundry and taking care of the kids all day? And
Yeah,
you know that their teammate is able to get all the same work done and their, production level is way below. So it's tricky because you have to really know for sure that you haven't put too much work on people and they're burnt out and they're missing deadlines because you've got deadline upon deadline upon deadline that are unrealistic. That could
yeah,
be a leadership problem. But if that's happening, they're going to be disengaged because they're burned out because you're giving them too much work to do. So missed deadlines is a symptom. It doesn't necessarily mean why the person is disengaged. Could be because you're giving them too much work, could be because they don't like the work. It's not the work
sure,
they were hired to do or they thought they were hired to
sure.
do. There's a million reasons, but it's
Yeah,
one of those things to investigate, right? It's a symptom. What's the reason? And if your team are missing your deadlines, that's probably impacting your bottom line, right? That means your customers aren't going to get what they're expecting on time, or products aren't going out, whatever it is that's happening. So that's
yeah,
a symptom that there's something wrong in the culture that needs to be looked at. What the answer is, that's what we have to do all the research and
sure.
see.
It seems like there's um this concept out there that's prevalent that I'm hearing more and more about like fire quick. Where and I just liken it to my mind. I think to myself, I'm like, man, if I woke up with a limp one day for whatever reason, I hurt a muscle, I sure wouldn't think about cutting my leg off, you know? And it just seems really weird that, and I don't debate it with people because I don't want to like, go down that road with people, but I just feel that that's such an easy way out to just like again, if somebody does something egregious, totally get it. Violation's a violation, but boy, I tell you what, when you're thinking about somebody that maybe to your point, absenteeism might be a little high. The work quality might not be there. They're missing some deadlines. Those are symptoms of something. Are you seeing that fire quick thing coming more and more in your research that you've done? Because I'm just seeing it a lot. I'm just curious if you're seeing it as well.
Yeah, I have heard of it as well. And it's an interesting thing for so many reasons because it's expensive. To hiring new people is expensive and
Right?
onboarding, yeah. So it impacts your bottom line. And like you said, there could be a million reasons why the person is not doing well, not performing. Maybe there's personal things going on, and I mean, legally, can you fire them if they're sick or something? You really need to
Yeah.
investigate. Is it a manager issue? Maybe your manager's being awful to them. Maybe there was someone and a team member that said something. There could be a million reasons why this person is not performing well. So I think I'm with you. Fire quick is,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good strategy.
I don't get it. I mean, like you said, and again, the numbers are all over the board as far as what it costs to, hire somebody new. I don't care. Call it 50 grand. I don't care. Some people say it's hundreds of thousands, whatever, depending on the size of the compensation package. But to have that be like your first knee-jerk reaction, it just seems to be kind of an awkward situation rather than, again, like I said, if I woke up, most people, if listening right now, if they woke up with a pain anywhere, they wouldn't just cut it off. I mean, you gotta figure out what's going on, right?
Right.
So I was just curious about that. As we start to land the plane today, Kristine, I'm just curious for people listening, are there some simple ways that we can engage our team? Are there some things that we can do, without people feel like you got to go out on some kind of 4-day retreat, or you got to bring in $100,000 speaker, or you got to do all this stuff? Are there some simple things that leaders listening or teams listening can do for themselves to engage their team?
Yeah, one of the easiest things, we know people want to be recognized. So tell your team thank you. Be nice to them. And it doesn't have to be gifts, it doesn't have to be expensive, but recognizing your team for, when they do good work, maybe they're just always doing what they're supposed to do. And we forget to thank people because like this is what we pay them for to do. They're doing their job. But people want to feel appreciated. That's like just human nature. We all want to feel appreciated. Showing gratitude to your team goes a really long way. And
Sure.
people also want to be heard. So asking for feedback, both how am I doing? If you're the leader, how am I doing as your leader? Is there anything you want me to do different? Getting their input is really helpful, but also listening what's going on in your life, that kind of building the connection that I was saying before. If you're
Right.
like manager, when you're having one-on-ones with your employees, first of all, have one-on-ones. Don't put them off. Don't skip them. You need to talk to your employees. But when you're having those, don't jump straight into work. Talk to them a
Yeah.
little about what's going on in their life. Is there anything I should know about? That gets to so if they miss a deadline or they're absent, you don't immediately think they're they're silent quitting, oh, they have a doctor's appointment. They've got some issue going on that is going to have multiple doctor's appointment coming up, and you can be supportive, but you've got to give them an opportunity and let them know that you care and you're not going to be punitive if they're taking off for some doctor's appointments coming up,
Yeah.
whatever. Like support your employees. But I mean, really simple is actually talking to them. And I think there's so many people, we just get busy, we get focused on our work, especially leaders, you're in meetings, you're doing all this stuff. We don't take the time to just talk, just say, how's your day going? How was your week? Maybe you hadn't talked to your whoever all week, 2 weeks,
Sure.
stop and have a conversation. So it's really just those human connections. I love some people who focus on culture are just focusing on two words like be kind, or they're using just choose love, do whatever you would do to show love to someone, just in a general, I think it's kindness. If we're just
Yeah.
nice to our people, it's so appreciated and it's so easy. I do the same. Like we get busy and it's easy to say, where's this, where's that? We have to focus on this. We don't, I don't have time for chit chat. But chit chat goes a long way in building relationships.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you, we try to tell people you have an external customer, which is your customer, and then an internal customer, which is your team. And it's crazy because we would recognize all day long our external customer, but yet we slide right by that internal customer and think that, they don't need that. And I think it's funny because I've heard people say, like you just said, well, hey, I don't need to recognize them. That's what they get paid to do. Why would I want to recognize them for doing their job? And it's just like, man, that's 70s. That's from the 70s, right? That's from like,
Mhm.
way back when. And
Mhm.
like the research that I've done shows that people would rather be recognized. Most people, there's a higher percentage of people that want to be recognized than get a day off or get time, get money. Recognition is like the number one way to do that. And I'm just curious, is that still pretty prevalent that recognition is the number one thing most people are looking for?
Yes, I keep seeing that too. I mean, we people want to be appreciated and acknowledged, and so yeah, I think and that helps. You're doing your jobs, and someone says thank you. It makes you feel good, and you keep doing it. It gives you motivation. I think a lot of times in businesses we go from one project to the next, and we don't pause. We really need to
Yep.
pause and celebrate the successes, celebrate your team's hard work. And it can be a small celebration. It doesn't have to cost money. Just get people together, say thank you. That was great. Maybe what did we learn? What do we want to do better next time? But, recognize and acknowledge that your team accomplished something and not just say, okay, great, we hit that task. We've got to move on to the next. Like
Yep.
it could be 15 minutes, but people, when you put so much time and energy into a big project, you don't want to just wake up the next day and go, oh, now I got another big project and another big
Yeah.
project. You need a little bit of acknowledgement of, hey, that was really great. And I loved another thing about building culture. It's not only we did great on this project, but tie it to your values. We had great teamwork on this, project, and therefore we created something new and innovative, and those are our values, and this is how we keep going. So let's do teamwork and innovation on the next one, or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
be specific about what your values are and acknowledge your employees when they are living out those values. And that helps reinforce your values, which helps build the intentional culture.
Wow, that's so cool. So I want to just challenge people here listening right now to actually, when you're done listening, make sure you listen because we got Kristine's tip of the day yet. But when you're done with this, I just challenge you to email or call or text one or two people on your team and just say what a great job they're doing. Appreciate them rather than just go on to your next thing. This is where, again, you just invested 40 minutes or so of your life to listen, and we appreciate it. I want you to do something with that. And the easiest way is just to think of somebody on your team. Maybe it's a leader, maybe it's somebody, a fellow team member, whatever it is. But I just want to encourage you, just imagine if all the people listening around the world right now did this right now, how cool that would be, because then the person that they did it to somebody. And all of a sudden, before you know it, there's just so much more recognition and gratitude. And I just think a place we all know places we want to work has that recognition, has that gratitude. There's just a great feeling. There's just a positive energy that when you walk into those places, rather than the other places that are just like everybody's heads down, everybody's scared to death to say anything. I mean, just what a horrible place to have to exist. So I just want to challenge you to do that. And again, for you, Kristine, what would your tip of the day be for somebody listening? Maybe it's something we covered, maybe it's something that we haven't covered yet, but what would your tip of the day be?
I think what you said about gratitude is a great one, and if everyone can spend a little time every day thanking someone, acknowledging someone for their great work. But I'm gonna also add, we haven't talked a ton about values, but if you want to be intentional about building your culture, you should have identified your core values, and you want to make sure that you are, as a leader, living or whoever, that you are following those core values in all that you do. So, as we're entering the holiday season, when it comes to holiday celebrations, make sure that they align with your values. And so if you're gift giving and you value sustainability, buy gifts that support the environment, or maybe donate to a cause instead of buying, things that are wasteful. Or just make sure that whatever you're doing really think back about your core values and make sure that your decisions reflect those core values.
That's fantastic. Great spot to end. There's so much more. We're going to put a bookmark here. I'm sure we're going to talk again because there's just so much there. I didn't even get to talk to you about ROI. I didn't get to talk to you about create, cultivate, and continuously evolve. So we're going to have to do this again. I love this topic. I could do it all day, but we got to go tell people now in a different way now that we've told them on the air. So for somebody listening right now, Kristine, that is like wanting to learn more about you, wanting to maybe understand about the culture assessment and some of the work that you do, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way is probably through LinkedIn, and my full name is on there. It's Kristine Mackenzie Gentry. Or you can also go to our website, which is just culturegrove.com, and or reach out to me, send an email, schedule time to talk. I love talking about culture, so I'm always happy to chat with people and hear what's going on in their company and see if we can, give some quick suggestions to make things better.
Awesome. Culturegrove.com or LinkedIn, find Kristine with a K, Mackenzie Gentry. Kristine, thank you so much for hanging out. It's so fun to find people that are aligned on this topic. And again, I could sit and do this all day. So we're going to do it again. But thank you so much for for what you shared and for all the work and the research and all the energy that you're putting into this. We appreciate it and can't wait to keep learning from you.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.